बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। शुरू अल्लाह के नाम से जो बहुत बड़ा मेहरबान निहायत रहम वाला है। Today's session is about gender and development, gender analysis, gender mainstreaming, in project cycle, gender monitoring, women issues, and recommendations. So let us define gender. Gender definition: differences between gender and sex, gender roles, equity, gender equality. These all will be covered today's sessions. Gender is a socio-cultural definition of a boy and girl, of a man and woman. Not only their responsibilities are set by the society, but also norms, dress codes, attitudes, opportunities, rights, mobility, marriage, freedom of expression, Gender refers to the roles and responsibilities of men and women in a given society. These roles and responsibilities are socially determined. Gender roles are not universal, but vary from culture to culture and sometimes community to community. They are changed over time. It means that gender roles and responsibilities are changeable. Here we can explain the difference between gender and sex. Sex means male and female. It is biological and physical. It is natural and universal truth. It is unchanging over time. Gender means masculine, feminine. It is set by society, culturally determined, change over time. I hope you will understand the difference between both gender and sex. Sex refers to the biological characteristics that categorize someone as either female or male. Gender refers to socially constructed differences between men and women. Gender roles are changeable as a result of broader social changes. For example, our mothers are housewives and we are working ladies in offices. So, gender roles is changeable. Gender role, reproductive role, unpaid role. Unpaid role of gender are childbearing, food preparations, cleaning, water bringing, and maintaining home. Productive roles are teachers, doctors, lawyers, pilots. Work for pay and cash or kind. Work that save household cash. Gender roles are managing role. Gender roles, volunteers, community managing role. Unpaid work for community benefit, that's called volunteer. Volunteer is a person who can sacrifice his time and money for the best interest of the community development. Another presentation is available on volunteer. Maintaining common resources, conservation and sustainable use of natural resources. Inequality. Culturally learned behavior, culturally assigned role, social and political status, less access to resources, means money, credit, training, job, free time. Control our resource, control autonomy, lifestyle. Opportunities in education, training, employment and mobility. Gender equity, fairness in women's and men's access to socio-economic resources, access to education, nutrition and health. A condition in which women and men participate as equal access to socio-economic resources. That is called gender equity. Gender equality. Gender equality means that women and men enjoy equal status in the society. Gender equality is the equal enjoyment by women and men of socially valued goods, opportunities, and resources. The aim is not that women and men become the same, but their opportunities and life changes become as remain equal. Gender analysis definitions are: gender analysis examines the relationship between female and male and their access to control of resources. A gender analysis should be integrated into the humanitarian needs assessments and in all sector assessments. Situation analysis to ensure that gender-based injustice and inequality are not problematic by the humanitarian interventions and that were possible greater equality and justice in gender relations and promote it. Gender analysis is important during the data collection stage. The process of analysis and interpretations of the data collected, indeed, it was not so difficult to differentiate the views of men and women. It was more complicated to retain those differences when the information was interrupted and compiled within the organization, especially when differences were not stereotyped. In certain cases, these reinforce gender roles rather than challenging them by focusing on certain traditional areas where men and women have different interests reflected by their gender roles, like water and emanations for women, without analyzing and interpreting differences specifically in more common areas. It was easier to work with groups with defined collective interests that are already divided by gender, women and men saving group, rather than with completely new group. It is important to view gender issues within the wider assessment of poverty or project area and not as a separate issue. What is a gender mainstreaming? The process of assessing in the implications for women and men of any planned action, including legislation, policies, or programs in all areas and at all levels. It is a strategy of making women's as well as men concern and experiences dimensions of the design, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of policy and programs in all political, economic and social phases so that women and men benefit equally and inequality is not perpetuated. The ultimate goal is to achieve gender equality with the aim of transforming a structure of inequality. Gender mainstreaming is taking account of gender equality concern in all policy, program, administrative and financial activities. Objective of gender mainstreaming: develop gender-based policies and experiences from field. Develop strategic and partnership on gender. Participate in regular international events. Ensure the policy and advocacy implementation of gender. An important aspect of this process is increased involvement of women in decision-making process about the development values, direction, program, resource allocations. When mainstream strategy ensures gender equality, it influences other policy areas such as poverty alleviation, sustainable development, environment conservation, globalization, peace initiatives. Gender sensitive culture of the organization. Anti-sexual harassment policy, clear instruction to avoid sexism in language and body gestures, flexible working hours, child care facility, transport facilities, separate toilets. Gender mainstreaming at program level or project level. Gender analysis, gender disaggregated data. Gender disaggregated data can be collected as a research base. On the base of that data, you can understand the differences and the discrimination of men and women. Gender impact assessment, gender performance indicators, gender sensitive monitoring and evaluation. The project cycle. Plan, project identification and formulation. Act, project implementation. Observe, monitoring, reflect, evaluation. This is the project cycle picture. Gender mainstreaming in project cycle. Stage 1. Identification and preparation, gender analysis of the context, role of men and women, gender relationship, legal and traditional rights, control of and access to resources, allocations of time, protective and reproductive responsibilities, need and priorities. Ensure baseline survey in gender sensitive. Collect disaggregated data. Assess to institutional capacity of partners. Stage 2. Design and appraisal. Ensure gender perspective is integrated into goal and objectives. Develop gender sensitive process and outcome indicator in participatory manner. Indicators must be quantitative as well as qualitative. Stage 3. Implementation. Carry out capacity development for gender integration. Collect gender disaggregated data. Ensure benefits for both gender and equity in accessing resources. Gender mainstreaming at the process level. Participation, actors, beneficiaries incorporating equal opportunities for women and men into all community development policy and activities. Institutional level, gender mainstreaming. When gender mainstreaming policies are implemented at institutional level, strategies to monitor and evaluate their progress should be in place. However, in this surge, no clear attempts to measure the progress of gender mainstreaming efforts within donor organizations were identified. This may be partly due to the fact that such mechanisms are often part of international program or policy documents and as such not accessible, or that is a neglected area. The most important lesson: Catholic Agency for Overseas Development, Oxfam, and the Agency for Cooperation and Research in Development learn from their reviewing processes are they need to listen and learn for staff and southern counterparts because gender relations differ from one culture to another and are an integral part of that culture. The advocacy of some of tools and models developed in the North by academics and NGOs and needs constantly to question and rethink the issues and approaches. The time required to work on an issue which affects staff and counterpart at both a personal and a professional level. A long-term perspective is essential when trying to address real issues of social change. The need for real staff commitment and money to work on the issue, accepting that there will be no quick result. Agency for Cooperation and Research in Development. Although the British NGO ACORD has been implementing a gender mainstreaming policy at institutional level for a few years now, a review of such policy in 1996 identified some gaps. In particular, accountability mechanisms were considered very weak. The standard of annual report was uneven, thus undermining the usefulness of such tools to monitor and improve programs. The lack of gender impact indicators was also identified as a problem, so were inadequate training and under-representation of women staff at management level. Culture resistance, different understandings of the policy, and confusion as to responsibility and procedure. One of the main lessons learned from ACORD's experience is the importance for an organization to look at itself critically. This enabled the organization to revise the existing gender policy and to strive for gender equality in program outcomes and equal numbers of male and female staff. Government level. The important international agreements were ratified by national government by which they committed themselves to integrate a gender perspective in the functioning of their institutions and in their policies. They are to International Convention for the Elimination of All Discriminations Against Women (CEDAW) and The Beijing platform for action and agenda with specific objectives aiming at gender equality in 12 different areas of concern and adopted at the 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing in 1995. These agreements have been very important because they introduce a gender perspective in government, institutions, and policies. Some NGOs, though, have documented reviewing processes of their gender policies. These are useful exercises to assess how well they are doing against gender targets and to readjust their policies and practices to improve their performance. In most of them, the following issues were raised: inadequate monitoring and evaluation mechanism, inadequate gender training at staff and field level, culture resistance, lack of funding, inadequate staffing of women especially at management level, poor accountability mechanism. Accountable for mechanism to hold governments accountable for mainstreaming gender. Disaggregated data, statistics, performance indicators, expert security, and regular public reporting, transparency. Statistics disaggregated by gender, urban, rural, residence, age, ethnicity, race, disability, and other socio-economic variables. Regular review qualitative and quantitative performance indicators, properly estimated target, strengthen the rules national to assist in the formulation of gender sensitive performance indicators and in introducing gender analysis in government reports. Accountable for mainstreaming gender. Introduction of gender auditing system and possibly of gender budgeting. Strengthen the relationship between national and civil society. Strengthen the participation of NGOs in review processes of national against performance indicators. Monitoring gender sensitive poverty reduction strategy program. In its strategy paper on poverty elimination and the empowerment of women, the British Department for International Development DFID processes a series of guidelines for the introductions of gender sensitive monitoring and evaluation mechanism. The main recommendations are: to use appropriate indicator and integrate them with the Gender Related Development Index and the Gender Empowerment Measure developed by the United Nations Development Programme. For more detail on GEM, refer to the sections of gender empowerment measures. To support the improvement of government statistics and that provide gender disaggregated data. To adopt any measure of progress to local conditions, to use qualitative measures to foster participation, to involve women at the project planning, implementation, and monitoring level so that the gender discrimination level will be reduced. To analyze gender roles within the target group to identify their different needs and take steps to address them, to involve groups and organizations with gender experts in the planning process and to involve people from the target group, especially women, so that they can express their needs and priorities. A low level of gender awareness among the staff of the program and or the partner organization at the policy making and implementation level. These results in incorrect assumptions on women's role and needs which are not based on factual information, make women's work invisible and neglect women's potentials to participate in and benefit from the program. Lack of gender specificity in the program document, insufficient representations of women and women's organizations in the program steering or advisory committee, a low level of gender awareness among the target population, existence of socio-cultural or legal barriers which may prohibit or inhibit women's participation in the program. Low commitment or interest among women because the program doesn't address their need the program doesn't address their needs. Constraints, lack of gender specificity in the program document. Oh, this presentation is already presented. Consider the following constraints: organizational arrangements such as the timing, location, or duration of program activities which may form a barrier to the woman's participation. Use of communication channels which are not accessible to women. Increases their workload, low educational level of women, gender monitoring. Gender monitoring is very important. Monitoring and evaluation mechanism can be applied at various levels. They can be used to monitor projects at field level, programs both at field and at institutional level, and policies at institutional and governmental level. This section explores the implications of using such as mechanism for each level and presents some experiences. What is monitoring and evaluation? Differentiations. Monitoring and assessment mechanism facilitate the implementations of policy because they measure the impact of the activities of a development program or policy on the target group and assess whether the targets are actually met. Monitoring and evaluation is general term that is used to describe this type of processes. Audits and impact assessment are terms used to define more specific monitoring and evaluation methodology. Definition of monitoring. Monitoring is the regular collection, analysis, and distribution of information and data on the progress of the activities and program implemented. Audits evaluates policies, reports, functions, establish whether those are actually applied in reality and identify opportunities for improvement. Evaluation definitions. Evaluation and impact assessment work at a deeper level. They are two slight different processes, although they both make an assessment of the project or program against its targets. Evaluation establishes whether the positive outcome planned by the project have been achieved. Impact assessment look at the positive and negative impact of the project. In 1996, the World Bank created a toolkit on water and sanitation with various instruments suggesting how to best integrate a gender approach in the planning process of water and sanitation. Among these instruments are terms of references for a gender analysis during monitoring and evaluation. In particular, it is suggested to produce gender disaggregated data and gender sensitive indicators to measure the impact of the project on women and men separately, to analyze the participation of women and men in projects and their access to resources, to examine the staff attitude towards gender issues. To assess the training of women and men in areas like maintenance and hygiene education, to examine how much women and men could decide the type of technology used and the setting of facilities. To involve community women and men in data collection and analysis, to organize meetings to inform all stakeholders on monitoring and evaluation findings. Including project staff and communities. Gender and monitoring in water and sanitation projects, to identify areas for future research, to analyze additional benefits from the project, if and how they were gained and how they were used. To analyze additional cost in time or labor for men or women generated by the paper, to draw lessons and provide recommendations. Assessment. Establish the nature of gender relations in phrases relevant to the project, access and control of resources, control of incomes within the household, patterns of expenditure within the household. If these are the gender relations, they are more likely to affect the impact of the project. Consider the potential impact of the project on gender relations, useful to analyze possible outcome and adjust the project program accordingly. How to approach gender impact assessment. Establish the nature of gender relation, phrases relevant to the project, access and control of resources, control of income within the household, patterns of expenditure within the household. If they are the gender relations, they are more likely to affect impact of the project. Establish the information required and design appropriate indicator. Disaggregate all data. Consider the impact on gender relations. Collect and analyze the data using appropriate tools and techniques, quantitative and qualitative. Carry out the process in gender sensitive way. Action 8, Participatory Impact Assessment. Action 8 has been carried out a research project on methods and indicators for measuring the impact of their program and projects on poverty reduction. Various processes have been started in different countries and reviews have been written. Each impact assessment exercise has been carried out in a highly participatory and gender sensitive way. Some lessons come out of the process as far as gender is concerned. Gender analysis is important during the data collection stage, but also in the process of analysis and interpretation of the data collected. Indeed, it was not so difficult to differentiate the view of men and women. It was more complicated to retain those differences when the information was interpreted and compiled within the organization, especially when the differences were more suitable or not stereotype. Gender is concerned. Discussion group were divided by gender and age: men and women, adult, female, youth. Certain cases these reinforce gender role rather than challenging them by focusing on certain traditional areas where men and women have different interests reflected by their gender role. Water and immunization for women, bullock plowing and migration for men, without analyzing and interpreting differences specifically in more common areas. It was easier to work with groups with defined collective interests that are already divided by gender, women and men saving group, rather than with completely new group. It is important to view gender issues within the wider assessment of poverty or project area and not a separate issue. Some lessons come out of the process as far as gender is concerned. In all the 6 villages studies carried out in Bangladesh, men and women said that increased income was their highest priority. In some villages, men and women agreed on particular women's development related changes, and in other they didn't. Also, women preferences change between villages. In India, men and women preferences were similar in some areas but not in others. In some cases, male youth were more similar to women preferences, but in other cases they were closer to those adult men. In its strategy paper on poverty elimination and the empowerment of women, the British Department for International Development (DFD) processes a series of guidelines for the introduction of gender-sensitive monitoring and evaluation mechanism. The main recommendations are: the main recommendations are to adapt any measure of progress to local conditions, to use qualitative measures, to foster participation, to hold meetings stakeholders, the evaluation unit of the Bureau of Programming and Management of the International Labour Office (ILO) has developed general guidelines on using gender-sensitive monitoring and evaluation mechanisms for their program and project. They provided useful suggestions and practical tools. General recommendation includes: to analyze gender role within the target group, to identify their different needs and take steps to address them, to involve group and organization with gender experts in the planning process, and to involve people from the target group, especially women, so that they can express their needs and priorities. Specify how many people have participated in the program activities. If the proportion of women participation is low, consider the following constraints: a low-level gender awareness among staff of the program and the partner organization at the policy making and implementation level. This result is incorrect assumptions on women's roles needs, which are not based on factual information, make women's work invisible and neglect women's potential to participate in and benefit from the program. Women issues: access and control our resources. Only access, not control. It's mean women can access resources but they can't control. The control is in the hand of men. Workload: women workload is really very high. They are cooking, home cleaner, dress washer, child care, animal rearing, fuel, food collections. All these working they are doing as a unpaid labor. They are not earning money. firewood collections, fodder collections, animal rearing, water collection. Women are collecting water and boys and men are consumer of water. Water collection take care of household in absence of men. Lack of women participation in decision making process at household level. In Pakistani culture, women are not involved in the decision making process. Women are disadvantaged by the norms which designate men as a head of household, and therefore the principal decision maker in the matter concern household resource control and use, and the number of child to be born and their education, marriage, etc. All these things are decided by men. Lack of recognition of women rights. Women in rural areas of Chitral have to bear double burden of domestic and outside work. However, the importance of women's role in the family and society is neither fully recognized nor appreciated. Women are economically dependent on men, which reinforce their low status in the society and makes them susceptible to control by men, violence and discrimination. Lack of market for selling of local handicrafts products. Although women have been doing handicrafts products, but due to non-availability a proper market, they are not able to earn some money. Denial of women's share in property inheritance. Lack of access to legal justice. Lack of financially money. Lack of legal awareness. Legal awareness programs trainings are very few, organized for a few groups, but majority of the women are unable to attend those workshops, so they are not well aware about their legal rights, human rights, child rights and women rights. Geographically inaccessibility, as courts are mainly located in town and transport cost may be high. So women are economically dependent, so they can't afford the transport costs to attend the courts. Long distance of Tehsil Hospital headquarters and district health headquarters. High transportation cost, lack of trained women, traditional birth attendants, LHVs, lady doctors, lack of toilets in remote areas, so the women and children are defecating in open field at night due to non-availability of toilet facilities. Lack of awareness about sanitation and hygiene, and especially hand washing with soap. MDGs, SDGs. Millennium Development Goals are sustainable development goals announced in 2002. Declaration aim to promote gender equality and empower women. 2015 deadline. But still women are dependent and gender equality is not ensured. The UN MDGs reports for 2008 discloses that 113 countries failed to achieve. The former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan once said that there is no tool for development more effective than the education of girls. Why gender planning? To integrate women into development planning on equal terms with men, incorporate gender needs during planning and need assessment, involve women in decision-making process at household level and project cycle. This is the end of the session. Please leave comments so that I can improve my presentation. I belong from a very remote and backward area of the KPK, and in my area women are mostly facing a lot of problems. They are economically dependent, they are facing health issues, education issues, nutrition issues. So I have tried to explain those issues in these presentations, and I hope the viewers will encourage me in this regard. Please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon for next video. Please like and share. Any suggestions will be highly appreciated. Thank you very much. On the basis of your suggestions, I can improve my presentation. So please comment.